Good afternoon, and welcome to the Akron Roundtable. I'm Karen Talbott, Board Chair and President of the Akron Roundtable Board of Directors. Today's program will be rebroadcast on WKSU FM on October 22nd at 8 p.m., sponsored by Layman's. This continues to be a different but effective venue for the Akron Roundtable event, and we're delighted that so many are able to join us today at this virtual forum. We sincerely thank the Akron Summit County Public Library for providing its talent and resources to make today's virtual event possible. Today, it's our privilege to welcome to the roundtable stage Dr. Julius Bailey. His topic is Sustaining Demographic Hope in this Gut-Wrenching Age of Racism, Hypocrisy, Bad Faith. You can read more about this month's speaker, future roundtable speakers, and our Akron Roundtable podcasts by going to our website, akronroundtable.org. Akron Roundtable is grateful for the generous support it receives from sponsors, patrons, and subscribers. You too can financially support our virtual forum series by going to our website to make a generous contribution. Our title sponsor throughout our 2020 season is Cleveland Clinic Akron General. I'm fortunate to serve alongside an outstanding group of dedicated community leaders on the Akron Roundtable Board of Directors, a list of whom can be found on our website. Should you have any questions or suggestions regarding Akron Roundtable, please feel free to reach out to any of our board members. During today's event, we'll be using Asker technology, which enables you to submit questions by way of mobile devices. Questions can be submitted at any time and will be forwarded for review during the Q&A portion of the program. Watch the screen for instructions should you need them. And after the formal broadcast, you'll have an opportunity to join a conversation in one of several moderated discussion groups we will have available. Please mark your calendar now for our November 19th virtual forum, when Akron Roundtable will host Dr. Para Jones, President of Stark State College. Today's speaker will be introduced by fellow Akron Roundtable board member Christine Curry. Following Dr. Bailey's presentation, he's generously agreed to take questions from our virtual audience. Christine will also moderate that portion of the program, as well as again note the opportunity for you to participate in the moderated discussion groups at the conclusion of our formal program by remaining connected. And again, please remember that during our program, you can submit questions to Dr. Bailey at any time on your device through Asker technology. Christine?
Thank you, Karen. Dr. Julius Bailey is the father of two daughters, ages 13 and 21. He loves bingo, cooking jerk chicken and collard greens, and reading. And he is an award-winning author and educator. He is a philosopher, cultural critic, social theorist, and diversity lecturer. Dr. Bailey has been a guest on numerous media outlets and is often sought to speak at colleges, prisons, churches, and for community organizations across America. He has authored 5 books, including the award-winning Racial Realities and Post-Racial Dreams, The Age of Obama and Beyond, and edited 2 others, notably the widely circulated The Cultural Impact of Kanye West. His current book, Racism, Hypocrisy, and Bad Faith, A Moral Challenge to the America I Love, was released in February of 2020. He is currently Director of Pre-Law and Justice Law and Public Policy at Wittenberg University. He currently hosts an online radio show, Straight No Chaser with Dr. Julius Bailey, through which he provides insight and guidance on social change. Dr. Bailey has taught at Central State University, Fresno State University, Lewis University, and Millikan University. At the same time, he has been active at his church, serving as a church administrator for a mid-sized ministry since 2004. Dr. Bailey has also continued to serve his community by serving as the Education Director for Youth with a Positive Direction, one of Illinois State's after-school gems that provides positive outlets for at-risk youth. Finally, he also founded the award-winning Project 8, another intervention-based youth service program that attempts to address some of the issues surrounding gun violence, STDs, and violent media. He is a highly sought-after diversity trainer, consulting in both the public and private sectors to help address long-standing issues of systemic racism, structural inequalities, and incarceration politics. Viewers, Dr. Julius Bailey.
Thank you, Christine. Hello, it is my pleasure and privilege to stand here in the middle of downtown Akron at the public library in this beautiful auditorium. I think it seats maybe about 200-300 people, and I see all 5 of you. So thank you for being here, right? But no, thank you for the invitation, both Joan and Karen. And thank all of you who are listening live, online, and who will listen at your leisure to this short talk today. Those of you who know me know it has to be short. So I'm looking at a clock. I'm gonna speak for about 32 minutes and get on out your way. I do want to thank the Akron Roundtable, certainly for being such a true democratic body, certainly for change that represents the best of what civic participation looks like, right? And so I think coupled with your religious and corporate and educational partners, I'm just excited to be asked to be a part of this august body. So thank you. Obviously, we are remote today, and so I appreciate the thought of keeping things distant, to keeping things safe. It is important to do that, although I would have loved to see all the beautiful hundreds of faces of all of you in Akron. Maybe one day you'll invite me back and I'll be able to see you when all this stuff is over. I certainly want to say greetings to the mayor, Mayor Horgan, and I thank you for allowing me and welcoming me into your city. My good friend, my dear, your state representative, Emilia Sykes, whose work is just outstanding. Obviously, I'm not here to campaign for her. Her work speaks for itself, but I want to give her homage here in her city for the work that she does on behalf of the state of Ohio as the state rep, as well as minority leader of the House. Also, I got to give a shout out everywhere I go to the chief of police. So let's give a shout out to Chief Ball and just let you know I appreciate you, brother, and the work that you do. Certainly, I hope to sit down with you one day and maybe have a conversation. There's some things I think we could talk about, and certainly to kind of loosen a little bit, quite frankly, your position on community engagement within the department and the ways in which we respond to certain things. But I shout out to the work that you do and to all the first responders in the city, as well as obviously to the city council and all those who work on behalf of this, the 5th largest city in the state of Ohio. We thank you for doing an awesome job doing what you do as Ohio continues to grow, reform, and improve. So bringing a talk sort of in the middle of a pandemic, right? As well as being 19 days from an election, has both a challenge and a pleasure, right? It's a gift and a curse. Those philosophers would know it's a pharmacon of sort, right? It's a disease and a cure at the same time. I am obliged, right, no matter what, to remind people what is at stake in our national present as well as in our future. For me, right, it's the very understanding of what democracy looks like, right? And what democracy can look like. And so Christine Curry, who introduced me, she mentioned that I am an author of a number of books, but the last 2 books were politically minded and social justice oriented, Racial Realities and Post-Racial Dreams, as well as Racism, Hypocrisy, and Bad Faith, which I'll talk a little bit about over the next 29 minutes. But certainly we want to ask you, if you feel so inclined, to go check out my website, juliusbailey.com, and get access to the books. Obviously, it's on your online retailers as well. Racism, Hypocrisy, and Bad Faith. I think you can see this, but obviously you look it up. It's my current book, came out in February, right smack dab. I was getting moving, I was rolling. People were bringing me, invited me, and then COVID-19 hit, right? So I'm glad to talk about it. But what Racism, Bad Faith, and Hypocrisy book is about, it's my second book in what I would like to call a trilogy of my love story with America, right? Racism, Hypocrisy, and Bad Faith is the second book, right? Her Racial Realities, which was penned in 2016, was the first one. This book penned this year, that came out this year, is my second book with my love story for America. I grew up like all of you in Akron. I grew up saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I sang the love songs of the country, my country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. We grew up with that, right? We grew up singing, America, America, God shed his grace on me, right? These love songs to America, right? And I used to clutch my chest, right? When the symbol of her beauty, the America flag, was raised, and I would clutch my chest then. And when my grandfather died, a Korean War veteran, he died, and we went to the cemetery in Illinois, the Abraham Lincoln Memorial Cemetery, and when they laid the flag out on his casket and they folded it up and gave it to my mama, and the trumpets and the buglers were bugling, I had my hand on my chest because I love America. And you know how, though, you grow up liking somebody, call yourself loving somebody, at first it's kind of what they used to call puppy love. Y'all know how that go. It's like you sort of find yourself in puppy love. Everything is just roses. Everything is just great. Those of you who married know what that first honeymoon period was like. This was about my first 30-something years of life. I was in puppy love. And the honeymoon period slowly began to get weaker, waned a little bit. I still loved America. But I began to question whether or not this relationship was balanced. I began to question whether or not it was just me. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm seeing things differently. Maybe America does love me. I just don't understand the way she loves me. Maybe I want her to love me the way I love her. Maybe I'm just confused with what love looks like. You've been there. Your girlfriend, your boyfriend, they look good during the dating period. You always go out with them when the makeup is on and the hair is real nice. And then you decide to give yourself to them. And then you have to wake up one morning and start seeing the flaws in the relationship. You start noticing what he or she looks like without the makeup on, without the perfect hair. You start realizing what happens when the truth is laid bare. This is what this crazy in love, as Beyonce called it, the moment that I began to realize that maybe I'm crazy in love happened when I watched Eric Garner in New York get choked by police officers. Standing in front of the store, no guns, no knives, no bricks, just a large body. Asking officers, why are you harassing me? The chokehold, the struggle, the loss of breath, the I can't breathe, the death. The names began to add up around 2014, 2015 for me. I began to see the names like Alton Sterling, like Tamir Rice, like Eric, Sandra Bland, Laquan McDonald. The names just started adding up. They couldn't breathe. I couldn't breathe. We can't breathe. And on the cusp of civic breathlessness, I heard an officer in Tulsa, Oklahoma, after he shot and killed Eric Harris. Oops, I thought it was a taser. And Eric Harris said, I can't breathe. And the officer said, F your breath. It was in that moment that I wanted to write a love letter to America. It was in those moments that I wanted to, that I began to pen racial realities and post-racial dreams. We were in the middle of a high time in America, a time in which President Obama was in the White House and everything was going good. And I began to sing that old Teddy Pendergrass song. It's so good loving somebody when somebody loves you back. I began to think that America loves me now. But in the backdrop of that love was F your breath. I needed to write. I needed to get it out. I needed to ask the question. And so that book in 2016, that book helped me to get a more of a national reputation, more of a sort of, it gained me, as Christine talked about, book awards and all that kind of stuff. But the reality was, me being able to articulate my feelings through this love letter allowed me to breathe again, allowed me access to breath, realizing that my voice and the voice of those on the underside of the Melvillian well, those voices can be heard. It was the least of these. Those of us in the Christian tradition know what Jesus talked about. And for me, this is why I'm so proud that Karen and Joan invited me. This is the best of what the Akron Roundtable has to offer, because it is and it strives to be a voice, a vessel, a vehicle for lasting and sustaining change. This is how I wish to live my life. Yes, I know we're in a nation right now, we're in a time right now where we have to register ourselves. Are we a Democrat? Are we a Republican? I guess there's no doubt, if you don't already know, I am a registered Democrat, big D. And some of you are registered Republicans, big R. But what we need to understand and think about as we're putting on and fighting for our teams, our team red versus team blue, we have to be careful and not let the vestiges of our team override what it is to be human in America. That's our challenge. Team red can't be so red that we ignore the blues and the blues-like sensibility. Team blue can't be too blue that it ignores the red, the blood of those hardworking, sweat-filled folk in America. You can't be too red and too blue and not see me and not see you. That's what Akron Roundtable says. It's a mirror to the community. What are we looking at? What do we see? You know, truth is, and what Akron Roundtable talked about is about seeing our flaws, right? Seeing the things in our society that needs to be touched, making the partnerships, making the connections so that we can certainly make a change for our communities. We have to do, as anybody in the room who might be rappers, rap fans say, we have to walk it like we talk it. We have to make sure that the very voice that we give is followed by the work that we offer. So, this book is why I wrote this book, because America, we need to walk it like a talk it. Honey, baby, I'm in love with you. You're in a relationship. I need you to walk it like you talk it. I can't have you engaged in hypocrisy and bad faith. I need to know when I come home to you. I need to know when I sing to you. I need to know when I uphold your colors and uphold your flag. I need to know that it's me you care about too. So when you cry all those tears after the latest mass shooting and the latest school shooting, and America is crying, saying something must change, but yet when you have workers out here trying to say, I know it needs to be changed, we need to have sensible gun control, we need to get rid of sort of weapons of mass destruction, we need to get rid of high velocity weaponry, we need to get rid, oh no, you can't touch our guns. But I thought you just cried yesterday when 27 kids were shot and 37 people died. I thought it was a national tragedy. Well, it is, but let's not talk about that political stuff today. It's too early, they say, to talk about this politics stuff. Now is not the time. No, the very fact that my baby got killed is a political action. It was politics that killed the kids in the school. It was politics that killed the kids in the Walmart. It was politics that killed the people at the dance club. It was politics that killed the people. It was politics. It was the politics of hate. It was the politics of intolerance. It was the politics of sort of wanton, I need my guns. I need these assault weapons. It was the politics of these in the hands of the public. And now you don't want to talk politics? It's too early. I know. We're in Ohio. And I can't be talking about the Second Amendment like that. But I just have a couple questions. Like, one, if you got a registered gun, then you shouldn't be tripping. And if you got a registered gun, God bless you. How many guns do you need, though? You can't call, there he goes, one of those bleeding liberals trying to go for my gun. No, I'm not. Keep your gun, do what you want to do, but I have to recognize the context by which you're wielding your gun. What do you need protection from? An army? What do you have fully automatic assault weapons for? Buying bum stocks of 100 and 200 round cartridges. What do you need that for? You ain't going to shoot no daggone deer with 100 bullets. When I walked up to this building where I speak into today, I passed a street called Martin Luther King Street. Now, quite frankly, it shocked me, not just because it's Martin Luther King, obviously they did around the country, but I very rarely see Martin Luther King streets in downtown areas. What would Martin Luther King say about a highly militarized nation? Cares more about big guns than shelter. I know. We just can't sit by, though. We just can't sit by. I can't sit by. We can't sit by and just let our children and let our young folk and let our old folk just get shot up because people are upset about their material and social conditions. I get that. We're going to get to that. But we have to ask ourselves, what all do we need? Well, with respect to our Secretary of State, Frank LaRose, who I understand spoke here recently, bless you, brother. We cannot, in good faith, Whether we're talking about Montgomery County, whether we're talking about Cuyahoga County, Franklin County, we can't in good faith in these large counties, right, only use and only can have one ballot box per county. And that's just in Ohio. We know states like Texas and Florida are right now in court trying to fight against that, because how do you want to say we are for free and clear elections, but yet you're going to have one drop box for hundreds of thousands of people? Do you not care about their voices? How would they get there from the outside of the outskirts of the city? Oh, there he goes again, that liberals talking. There is no such thing as voter suppression, they say. I say, oh, it isn't, huh? I said, so every time Ohio just told you, if you haven't voted in a couple cycles, we're going to pull you off the rolls. Maybe I didn't want to vote last cycle. Maybe I didn't vote 2 cycles ago. Texas themselves, Texas has already pulled 700 polling places within a period of 4 years, 700 polling places throughout one state, and 85% of those were in Black and brown communities. And you say there's no such thing as voter suppression? Racialized voter suppression? Access-driven or lack of access-driven voter suppression? I just want you to love me the way I love you. You want me to show you love? Show me love. I know y'all hate voter suppressions. I know my conservative brothers and sisters in the Akron area and Summit and Stark counties, I know y'all worried about the fact that, oh my gosh, they got me listening to this bleeding heart liberal. I'm telling you right now, that is not necessarily what I'm here to do. What I'm here to ask you is that, how deep is your love, Summit County? Y'all heard the Bee Gees song back in the day. How deep is your love? Right? You can't tell me you love your citizens and you don't make it accessible that's a part of their free right as citizens? And you want to argue over one drop? I can't have multiple drop boxes. And then on the flip side of that, you got places like California who's so gun-ho with trying to include and make sure there's some kind of voter mess out there, that you got the state Republican Party who is putting up fake ballot boxes trying to ensure that there's fake stuff going on. We're supposed to be a nation of fairness. We're better than this. We're better than this. Akron Roundtable knows we're better than this. The work that all of you come together to do, you know we're better than this. We have to work because our democracy is under attack. And yes, it's gut-wrenching for some of us who love deeply. Is your love not deep enough to feel? Is that fake love? I want that real love, where you feel your hurts and mine. Well, America, what are we going to say? This book talks about we're protecting monuments, making sure that the stone doesn't get rolled away, excuse the religious reference, but making sure the stone don't get torn down and rolled away. And so we sign executive orders to make sure it becomes a federal crime to mess with our stones. And then at the same time, you make it federally impossible to have a conversation about race, diversity in America. Do you love me, America? Do you love me enough to say, I want to talk about a truth of an America, not just a myth of America? Maybe you don't. You don't want to have a conversation about racial justice and diversity? You don't want to have a conversation about historical accuracy and veracity? We want to continue this sort of mendaciousness? democracy, and diversity. Roundtable is under attack. Unfortunately, we are living at a time when these enemies are looking more and more like ourselves. These enemies, the mirror, again, I referred to the roundtable mission, the mirror. What do I see when I look in the mirror? What is that sexism that I have to get out of me? What is that xenophobia in me? Folk out here fake angry about immigrants taking their jobs. Manufactured hate as we deal with our inadequacies of a nation, as a state, as a county, as a person. So look, my time is going fast, I'm watching the clock. All 5 people is in the room. I want to kind of remind us that I mentioned the Bee Gees, Sister Karen, Christine, living in a world of fools, breaking us down, and we all should let us be. We belong to you and me. Can we talk about a nation that asks the gut-wrenching question of a democracy that knows that we belong to one another? Can we understand that love is, as my mentor Cornel West talks about, love is the representation, the very underbelly of the very gasoline that fuels what justice looks like. And just as some of us sort of levy out a little bit more attention for one child over another, a little more food for one pet over another. Why? Because they need it. They demand it. They crave it. Love must be tailored to the needs of the beloved. You cannot be a state that prides itself in business, but we hate our workers. Our workers need affordable and living wages. We cannot boast about economic booms through quarterly profits and act as like the economy is great for investors. But how many investors do we have in Summit and Stark counties whose economic situation is booming? We know that economies aren't just run from Wall Street. They're run from Main Streets. And not just from Main Streets, they're run through all the, and here in Spring, and here in Akron, they're run all over this city. West of Hudson Street. Yeah, we need economic booms in West Akron too. Middlebury, they need an economic boom. You know, I'm a philosopher, and Plato teaches us that we must seek the form, the pure goodness, the pure form of justice, the pure form of love, the pure form of beauty. So that means we must be daring. We must be daring. We must be willing to go pay the ultimate price to make sure we reach the ultimate pinnacle of what the true love and true good and true justice is. What does that mean? And this death doesn't have to be a physical death, but it needs to be killing off those parts of us that needs to die. We talk about the sexist and racist and homophobic parts. It needs to die. How can we, Akron Roundtable, penetrate injustice if we don't show what justice looks like? That's our responsibility, Akron. And we know that there are children amongst us who have been discounted and criminalized because the color of their skin or the economic locations of their families, what zip code you live in, the sick who hear politicians argue whether or not they should let them have access to health care. Some even arguing that giving access to health care is somehow an un-American form of socialism. Have you looked in the eyes of somebody who didn't have health care before and asked them, what are you going to do with your situation? That's what I know the Akron Roundtable seeks to correct. We have, over 220-something thousand deaths in America over this coronavirus stuff, and millions of these, a lot of these people, thousands of these people were lawyers and doctors and nurses, and they weren't just poor folk. But we have to remember that even before the pandemic hit, there was a pandemic of poverty operating within our cities and within our states in America. There was 700-800 people a day dying of poverty. They say in January, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, it says over 43% of this nation, 20% of African Americans, 66%, 66 million people who were Caucasian were all in poverty. But the 26 million of African Americans represented over what? 60% of the Black population. How deep is your love? Child poverty in this nation prior to the pandemic was at grotesque levels for a country that claims this amount of wealth. We had over 37, almost 40 million people living without health care. 80-something, 90-something million, Christine, who lived without insurance. 60-something million who worked without a living working wage. So look, as I close this conversation, we've seen pandemics of economic proportions. We're just now engaged in a pandemic of health proportions. And now imagine the confluence of economics and health and watch it, and somehow we can act like it doesn't exist. We need vaccines. Yes, we do. And the president is reminding us every day, we need vaccines. We all want a vaccine, like Trump had the other day. But I call on Congress to give us a vaccine called a stimulus plan. Poor people need a vaccine. Working class people need a vaccine. The business people need vaccines. The president just got steroids that made him feel all strong and big. I appreciate that. I'm glad the brother is back in the race. I can't wait to watch him tonight. Well, I might can wait. But anyway, I'm going to watch him tonight. He says, maybe I'm immune because I'm the strongest that I've been in 20 years. Yeah, dude, you immune, all right. You on them roids, player. But working Americans need a steroid shot too. Working Americans we need vaccines and a steroid shot to make sure that we don't lose our housing. We need a steroid shot to make sure that those parents who are at home with their children and those children who don't have access to good Wi-Fi, they need steroid shots too. America needs a stimulus plan. And the hearts of America needs an inoculation, a booster shot that helps us against intolerance, helps us to eradicate indifference. So look, I'm grateful to the Akron Roundtable. And when I hear our president the other day says, why won't suburban women like me? I get you, brother. But you're asking this question after you've rolled back anti-discrimination through lending and through housing and redlining through one of your executive orders. What did you tell them? I've saved you and the suburbs from those other folk coming to your town. He's bragging that he's saving white suburbia. So many suburbs I know got mixed races in it already. I don't know what suburbs he's talking about. Why don't suburban women like me? Well, maybe they'd like you if you didn't traffic in sexual misconduct and kissing and grabbing women without their consent. Maybe they'd like you. Why will you like me? Please, suburban women. Maybe they will like you if you didn't continue to disrespect their parents and grandparents and mock the elderly and mock those people trying to gain access to sort of Medicaid. Maybe they would like you. Suburban women, why don't you like me? Cuyahoga Falls women, why don't you like me? You want me to like you even though you sort of promised to gut Roe versus Wade and continue to use the body, the woman's body, as a wedge political issue between political debates. Suburban women, why don't you like me? Stowe women, why don't you like me in Stowe? Won't we please like me? Well, you want us to like me? Well, even though you still underpay teachers and you threaten to cut funding to teachers if they don't go back to work and face the pandemic and these children because of a process that you put out there or wouldn't create a national agenda for. You want us to like you? Green suburban women are saying you want us to like you even though you've placed heavy burdens upon medical first responders. You've placed heavy burdens upon nurses. You've placed heavy burdens upon female and male doctors. You don't have a national standard for COVID-19. You want us to like you? No, sir, we can't like you. This is a toxic relationship, and I must leave it today. And in 19 days, America has a choice. And even today, we have our own choices. What kind of American do I want to be? What kind of person do I see when I see in the mirror? This is why we, you, me, Akron, we can sustain democracy in these gut-wrenching times. And the moment that you wander far from me, I want to feel you in my arms again. You come to me like a summer breeze, keep me warm deep inside, softly, because it's me you need to show. America, Akron, Summit County, how deep is your love? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bailey. Those were very inspiring words. We appreciate you. Viewers, please be mindful that we are social distancing here, and we do have masks, and we have taken the proper precautions to keep Dr. Bailey and our attending individuals safe. Our speaker has graciously agreed to respond to questions from our viewers. To submit a question, watch for instructions on the screen or visit akronroundtable.org for more information. Dr. Bailey, we've got some questions here for you. First one, a viewer's asking, as a philosopher, what would you say is the purest form of the U.S. Constitution?
I think the purest form is the form that we often forget, which is one of the first lines of the preamble, right? That in order to form a more perfect human union, we have to do what? Establish justice, right? We have to establish justice, right? And so what does it mean, or what does it take to establish justice, right? That's the purest form. That's our work. Right, we get caught up in this concept of we are a free country, we are a free nation, where we are free to sort of do certain things, but some people aren't free from doing certain things because we haven't established justice first. So I think to the requester, I think for me, the most purest form is our ideal and our work, and the kind of work that Akron Roundtable and places all over the nation do. to establish justice.
Thank you. Another question, somewhat along those lines. What do you think happens when the decisions of our highest courts do not align with the values of the majority of Americans?
Well, I think, certainly I think that we have a fundamental chasm, right? A fundamental problem. The beauty of America, right, as opposed to some countries that doesn't have this beauty, is that the court can be checked, right? The court can be checked, and they could be checked by the U.S. Congress. Now, the question becomes, as we're dealing with now, what happens when the Congress and the judicial branch becomes in cahoots? We have a Congress that can actually, if, for instance, let's just be real about it. If, for instance, we want to make sure that we protected, to make sure that your 24 or 25, your daughter is able to stay on your health care, Congress can ensure that no matter what the judicial branch does. But we don't do it as a Congress. We have the ability to. Roe versus Wade been fighting for what, 50-something years? Why are we still having a wedge issue conversation about what possibly Coney Barrett might do? We could stop that now through the congressional, through the U.S. Senate and the House by ensuring that it's the law of the land, period. So we have a way to keep the jurists in check, whether it's 5-4, 6-3, 7-2. If we elect U.S. representatives and U.S. senators who are in line and in support of people and people's rights and people's freedoms, and not legislating body and making sure that you keep track on justice and establish justice and ensure domestic tranquility. We need peace in our streets. Yes, we do. We need peace in our homes. We need peace in our neighborhoods. We got to provide for that common defense and promote the general welfare. Oh, don't say the welfare word, Democrat. We have a way to combat it when our hearts are aligned to justice. If our love ain't deep, if we out here fake loving it, fake loving America, you don't love America if you don't love the most vulnerable of America. I can go on, but that's my answer.
All right, thank you.
Sorry about that.
Dr. Bailey, Ohio is heavily gerrymandered and does not have a representative government. Republicans in Columbus have no incentive to address racial issues. How do you reach them?
So, obviously, constructions like heavily gerrymandered would be, a conversation that probably both sides of the aisle would have to have. But certainly gerrymandering exists. Certainly you do have the capital city that is heavily Republican. And I'm not going to lie. I mean, I'm just by virtue of being a Republican don't necessarily make you somehow against justice, right? So you'll never hear me have that conversation. Yes, I'm a registered Democrat. That don't mean I can't engage myself in a conversation with Republicans who give a daggone about what the Republic looks like. And so I agree with this, the person's question, is that there is work to be done. The question we have to ask ourselves, I think, is everything from term limits and things like that. We have to ask ourselves, listen, are we willing to be honest enough and ask ourselves, why are we trying to avoid a diversity within your representative districts? Well, what are you afraid of? What are you protecting? Oh, that's right. This is your job. This is your career. And you want to make sure that your career and your career of your friends are protected. But wait, but if I bring in too many more people, if I actually make these districts a little bit more representative of what the city might look like, if I carve the wrong way, too much one way, and it always happens on the other side too, when it's too Democrat, when it's too liberal, they get to somehow, we need to sit down and recarve this up because it's too much attention being done to these poor folk. We need a stimulus, an inoculation against hatred and some of the stuff that happens within our state bodies. The wonderful work that Amelia Sykes and others are doing is trying to stave off that type of hate. Right? And so I believe that there is room for conversation across the aisle. But again, it all boils down to, what does the people want? What does it got to get the people what they want? But the people have to know what it is that they're fighting for. And if you believe in a free and true and just nation, you have to make sure that one party, one person, one entity doesn't monopolize the stuff. This is a relationship. You don't want your relationship to have one person monopolizing the stuff, do you? That's what I would say.
Thank you. We're going to switch to some questions regarding higher education based off your current position. First off, to quell their financial woes, many universities are trimming athletic programs with cuts that are disproportionately impacting sports that attract athletes of color. And I'll just add students of color.
Students of color, right?
Who happen to be student athletes. What are your thoughts on this, Dr. Bailey?
Well, I think, lean times call for lean measures, right? And so, certainly I'm not going to sit up here and argue that, certain institutions have made horrible decisions when it comes to making cuts, right? I'm not going to argue that. I'm not going to be one that's going to tell you that, there's no way we should have got rid of that volleyball program. Maybe it shouldn't have, but this is just a lean time for this lean moment. And just like we all have to do in our particular households, something got to give. We can't go out to Applebee's every night now. And, football is not Applebee's. I'm not talking about football. I'm not talking about Applebee's. I'm talking about that hard and tough decisions must be made in lean times. So what does that mean for athletic programs? That means that obviously we know we have to protect Title IX. No question. So we can't be sort of imbalanced, right? Cut the women's golf, cut the women's volleyball, cut the women's water polo just because they don't raise money so that we can keep wrestling no, we got to be careful there too. The sisters need that athletics also. They need that competitive advantage, the ability to be able to give scholarships as well. So I'm not talking about that. But what I am saying though, is that, again, lean times call for lean measures. And no matter what you look like, our institution, Ohio State, everywhere across America has lost money during this pandemic. And so tough decisions have been made, right? Enrollments have been cut. Faculty and staff and have been cut. I mean, I don't want to talk about one particular school, but I mean, there's people that are working right now in schools on extremely lean faculty. Some schools that don't have administrative assistants anymore. What does that mean? That means those administrative assistants are at home, don't have jobs, trying to get access to jobs. And the federal government, unfortunately, because the states are running out of money, the federal government has said no more money to unemployment. So what do? All this has trickle-down effects. So there's a long way to answer that, Christine, but the reality is it's real. And so I'm not pro-football. I mean, I'm a college athlete, right? So of course, I'm going to be leaning toward I want sports, but I don't want sports at the behest of not having a scholarship for the student to graduate. I don't want to make sure I save the Big Ten. Don't save the Big Ten, save scholarships, right? Save access to the best type of education you can get, right? Tough times call for tough, lean decisions.
All right, this is a good segue to this next question. Based on your work with university students, are you hopeful that they are prepared to lead this country to a better place in terms of racial equity than prior generations?
Well, I will answer it the way that my mentor taught me. He said, I walk around with this cross on my hand because I walk within a tradition of Christianity. And by virtue of the fact that I claim to be a Christian means that I'm locked into a tradition of hope. So I ain't got no choice, Christine, but to be hopeful. But if I look out at my classroom and I look out at the current state of America, not just the last 3.5 years, but certainly the attack against education at every level. The Betsy DeVos's, and not just her, but a nation that is attempting to sort of put more priority on the privatization of schools than investing in public school systems. And disinvesting or divesting from the public school where most of our young people go to, and putting that money into and partnering with corporate entities. Now, again, I'm not opposed to corporate public partnerships, but I also need to make sure that, hey, Bill and Melinda Gates, can you also give to the Akron City School System as well as you give to the Akron private school system, right? I get that, right? So our students are coming into a lot of our colleges, right, at 16, 17 years old, already behind a proverbial 8 ball because their knowledge base isn't as strong as it used to be, right? Now, they're probably the most diverse and probably the most sort of interracial that we've probably had in maybe in the history of America. I get that. But we also, that's within the backdrop of probably one of the most hated times, one of the most sort of divisive times in America right now. So you have people who already got black friends, who got brown friends, who got Asian friends, who got friends of different races and different religions within their towns, but yet they hear on the news, they hear parents, they hear grandparents and great uncles talking about those people and those people doing these things. So they come into the classroom vexed, torn, because they got this big black teacher named Julius Bailey trying to correct them and fix them and help them to be the best as they can be, while their granddaddies and their uncles and their great aunts talking about, oh, those bleeding liberals, all they want to do is suck you dry. And they like, no, he's talking about love. He's talking about respect. He's talking about it, sort of, equity. He's talking about no. And so you have the backdrop, the noise of the choir that's not allowing the soloist, the student, to sing. And so I'm hopeful that you have enough teachers and you have enough priests and community organizations who are still fighting up against history and fighting up against the news and fighting up against even our current president and fighting up against hate and fighting up against xenophobia and fighting up against hatred and saying, listen, America is an immigrant country. Why we acting like we ain't? Do I have hope? I do have hope. I do have hope that the best of who we are as America, the love ethic, the justice ethic will come through despite the noise from the pedantic periphery, if you will.
Thank you. Another viewer asked, what is the best way for white people to be advocates for people of color?
Well, so, I'm certainly, I can give a whole lecture on that, right? Not specifically to white people, but the tradition of non-Black people who are engaged in the Black freedom struggle. So I certainly understand that you have a rich history. You have a history. There's no major legislation, no major movement in America that would have taken place without the engagement of white voice, without the engagement of white bodies, without, in many cases, the blood of white bodies, without the death of white folk. And so, as I said earlier in this conversation, we have to be willing to rid ourselves and maybe even kill a little bit of part of ourselves. That's the Socratic part, right? Are you willing to die, right? Are you willing to sort of engage in what it means, what the best of a civil society means? And it means to kill off certain sort of cancerous aspects of who we are. So yes, I'd be your number one advocate. I'd be your number one fan. I will help you. Even if Trump won't let us have a conversation in the public square, we can do it in the private square. Let's just meet in the back room, in the corners, and say, if Trump say we can't have diversity conversations, then we're going to have it in the church. Then we're going to have it in the back room. We're going to have it in the dark. Because we're not going to let one person, we're not going to let a party of people who are just beholden to that one person as if he's somebody like a Nero or something and afraid to fight up against it. We're going to make sure that hate does not have the last word. Diversity and truth is ringing in the hearts and minds of America. And counties like Summit and these area counties like that can operate through love and not through hatred. That's what we can do. I'm with you. Call me, email me, invite me back. Let's have the meetings. Let's continue the meetings. Let's partner with those non-Black folk who are doing the work. And yes, we all can do this together.
Thank you, Dr. Bailey. One last question. Early on, we've shared with our viewers that you have 2 daughters. How do you equip them and others to fight racism when it seems to be growing rather than diminishing?
You lead like you lead like you want to be led, right? You walk it like you talk it, right? There's no question. I'm not going to hide. I'm not going to let anybody who is close to me, whether it's my daughters, whether it's my mama, whether it's my students, whoever. I'm not going to let nobody live in a world of sort of mythology. I'm not going to let my daughter knew in 2nd grade that Christopher Columbus didn't discover America. I ain't letting her go through that kind of conversation where they where she doesn't understand how imperialism works, how colonialism works. She's going to understand that. Why? Because if our people don't understand how colonization works, then we're bound to possibly return to it. So what has to happen is that we have to have honest conversations about our history, honest conversation about our nation, honest conversation about our economics, honest conversation about our religions, honest conversation about all that makes us who we are. Because if we continue to operate through life lies, as Eugene O'Neill, the great Irish writer, talked about it, we operate through these lies that somehow give us reasons to make ourselves feel better than we are, we're going to always suffer a harder and harder fate. Pride goeth before the fall. And I don't want my children, I don't want my students, and within this hour, I didn't want you, the Roundtable of Akron, to not be too prideful that you won't engage in the mirror where truth lies.
Dr. Bailey, thank you so much for being with us today. On behalf of the Akron Roundtable, it's my pleasure to present to you a contemplative sun as a memento of your time with us this afternoon. This celebratory work of art was designed exclusively for the Akron Roundtable by artist Don Drum. Thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again next time. Unfortunately, due to technical difficulties, we're not able to offer the discussion groups today. But please have an enjoyable and safe day.